While the West has sanctioned fuel imports from Moscow over its invasion of Ukraine, China's imports of oil from Russia rose to record highs in May. Last month, China's crude oil imports from Russia soared 55% from a year earlier. The world's second biggest economy imported around 8.42 million tons of oil from Russia last month. The import is equivalent to roughly 1.98 million barrels per day, which is up a quarter from 1.59 million barrels per day in April. With record imports from Moscow, Beijing has surpassed its shipments from Saudi Arabia. Separately, China's imports of Russian liquefied natural gas amounted to nearly 400,000 tons last month. This is 56% more than same month last year. Even though Moscow had to slash prices, it was still able to find buyers for its oil despite Western sanctions. Russia is back to the top ranking of suppliers to China after a gap of 19 months. China is the world's biggest crude oil importer. Despite dampened overall crude oil demands due to COVID-19 curbs and a slowing economy, China's overall crude oil imports rose nearly 12% in May from a year earlier. Remember, Beijing has refused to condemn Moscow's war, and leading importers have in fact stepped up buying cheaper Russian oil on top of sanctioned supplies from Iran and Venezuela. China imported 260,000 tons of Iranian crude oil last month. Despite US sanctions on Iran, China has kept taking Iranian oil. And for more details on this, our correspondent Patrick Falk has sent us this report from Beijing. Take a look.
Well, the latest data puts Russia back on the top of the list of suppliers to the world's biggest importer of crude oil. The figures from the China General Administration of Customs showed that China imported about 8.4 million barrels of oil from Russia in the month of May. That was up 55% compared to the same period a year ago. And despite all the sanctions that have been heaped on Russia by the West, it appears that Moscow isn't having any trouble finding buyers for its oil, even though it is having to slash prices. And it appears that China's taking full advantage, and that's despite the fact that demand has been dampened by COVID-19 restrictions in the country at the moment. What's also interesting is that only about a week ago, if you remember, President Xi Jinping used the occasion of his 69th birthday to call President Vladimir Putin, and Chinese state media had reported that the phone call was very much focused on President Xi Jinping talking about wanting peace and stability to the global economic order and trying to find a settlement to the Ukraine crisis. The Kremlin readout, by contrast, talked about the two leaders discussing closer economic cooperation, closer trade ties as well as military ties. And it would certainly seem from this data that we're reading right now that relationship between Moscow and Beijing hasn't been affected in any negative way whatsoever because of the crisis in Ukraine.
WION is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news on the move.